keynote speaker is Gary Knell. Actually, this speech is going to be actually a kind of conversation, and we're about to tell you about something very exciting that the National Geographic and Esri are doing together. So please join me in welcoming Gary Knell, the CEO and President of National Geographic.
Thank you, sir.
You're going to use this, Gary?
I'm being clicked backstage.
In the behind, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm trying to embarrass him because he's such a good person, and so
well,
you can't. He said he can't speak and dance or do one of these at the same time.
I am duly embarrassed.
Okay, good.
Okay,
So,
thank you, Jack.
thank you, Gary.
Just wait till I have the questions for you now. Good morning, everyone. It's really a great pleasure to be back at Esri. It's an incredible organization, and I don't think there's any more visionary leader of any company in this country or the world than Jack Dangermond. So let's hear it for him. He does an incredible job. And, you know, we are connected in this love of geography. We're connected in all of us in this room. And when I attended the Esri National Conference out in San Diego, I said to my colleague, in many ways, this is the National Geographic Society. And of course, the National Geographic Society was founded at the Cosmos Club just up the street on Massachusetts Avenue in 1888. We like to think of it now as a 128-year-old startup as we try to reboot ourselves, and many of the things you just heard before were so relevant to us as an organization going forward. But I want to tell you a little bit about what we've got in mind and what we're cooking up with Esri that I am so excited about. And we go back to 1865, even before NatGeo was around, and Frederick Law Olmsted looked out over Yosemite Valley and saw a place worth saving. He urged the California legislature to protect it from rampant development. This, of course, is Yellowstone. Olmsted had agreed. He had previously designed Central Park in New York City, and he was convinced that beautiful green spaces should exist for all people to enjoy. It's a scientific fact, he wrote, that the occasional contemplation of natural scenes of an impressive character is favorable to the health and vigor of men, and especially to the health and vigor of their intellect. National Geographic has cared about those same things and about open and conserved land for a long time. And we've been key part of creating a more wild United States. We actually helped purchase land for the Redwood and Shenandoah National Parks, building on the success of 14 other reserved lands, including the oldest, Yellowstone, which was protected in 1872. And prior to that protection, Yellowstone was going into not such a good place if you go back and read the history. This photo here, taken by the first Gilbert Grosvenor, who is known as Bert, is of then President Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, and John Muir to his left at the foot of a giant sequoia tree in Mariposa Grove, California, in 1903. In 1916, 100 years ago, we produced an issue entirely dedicated to conservation called The Land of the Best that went to every member of Congress. And believe it or not, someone from NatGeo walked onto the floor of the House and dropped issues onto the, and I think that would be a really good idea to do today, actually. And for several presidential candidates as well. So it was, or maybe all the presidential candidates. It was part of the information used to form the National Park Service in 1916. So now 100 years later, a century later, we're celebrating the anniversary of the National Park Service. Our January issue of National Geographic magazine had a cover story that discussed the value of green space as well as the need of all humans to have nature in their lives and what happens to our brains when we don't have enough of it. Neuroscience research suggests that nature makes us nicer as well as calmer. Hence, the presidential debate should be outdoors. I'm going to get on a roll on this. A study out of Korea showed that volunteers looking at urban scenes showed increased brain activity when it is processed in this way, and it does help process fear and anxiety. But when they were shown natural scenes, areas associated with empathy and altruism lit up. Jack and I both have lived, I grew up in Southern California, and I know today there's still a lot of kids in East Los Angeles who have never seen the Pacific Ocean. This is a world that we need to open up to the next generation of kids. Our beautiful country, from this, of course, classic National Geographic map behind me, is part of our inspiration to create something new with Jack and his team that we're so excited about helping provide literally a map to create a greener infrastructure for America that we want to call the land of the best 2.0, 100 years later. The Great American Landscape Project. We're going to work with Esri to create several products around this Great American Landscape Project, which will provide the latest snapshot of green spaces across America, creating tools and resources for states and local jurisdictions to be used by planning professionals such as yourselves at all levels, for local conservation groups, for local governments, for local land trusts, and for just local property owners to be able to make informed decisions about their open spaces. We'll be using our newly formed Center of Excellence in Mapping to produce some amazing visualizations of this concept. And we'll be pulling, of course, from data produced by most of the agencies represented in this very hall today. The project will map critical landscapes in the United States and encourage Americans to scale green infrastructure at other scales. It is a national effort and a collaborative one. And I look forward to working with Esri and all of you in this room on this effort. For together, we will use the potential of these incredible innovations, these technological innovations, to show the great pathway of openness for our children and our grandchildren, just as Teddy Roosevelt and Bert Grosvenor and others and John Muir thought about over 100 years ago. We can do this now. And for centuries, it is my dream that people will remember this innovation that can be a collective effort of us in this room and many others across America, who will thank us for this merging of technology to protect America and to protect our precious planet. So thank you for inviting me here this morning, and I look forward to further chats with Jack. Thanks very much.
Yeah, great, Gary. Yeah. So, Gary is my good friend. We immediately liked each other. You know, he used to be at Sesame. He taught many of your kids many things, right, Gary? He then joined NPR and ran that for a couple of years, and then joined the National Geographic just 2 years ago? Something like that.
2.5.
2.5. So immediately when he saw your work, GIS work, he understood what it would mean. This effort of creating a national green infrastructure map is not a new idea. We have been working on it for a number of years, and it involves taking a collection of different layers, as Gary mentioned, your data sets, data on transportation, soils, water, vegetation, terrain, and integrating them into a series of web maps that can be accessed and used by different organizations at all levels of government, as well as NGOs and NPOs and conservation organizations around the country. This map is not a plan, it's a map. And the map can give inspiration to create plans. It's not our prescription of what must be, it's just showing in a ranking across America the areas that are the most scenic, the areas that represent major hazards, the areas that represent major and significant ecological assets that we have in this country, and also cultural assets, overlaid as web maps that people can connect to and dial into and stream into their own local planning efforts, whether they be advocacy or government, whether it's a federal BLM organization or it's a local county. And it's not the complete picture. It's just what we can do. So there you have it. Do you like this idea? Yeah. So that's it. No, we thought we'd maybe just have a conversation about this as well, like Sue and I had a conversation.
Great.
And share with you. I'd like to ask, is there any questions, but that would go on and on and on. How many of you in the audience feel this is a strong and powerful vision and idea that you could buy into?
Yeah,
that's good. How many of you think it's a wild-ass idea that, you know,
yeah.
one person here, right in the front row. Okay, you want to come up here and talk about that? Put you on the spot. Look.
I could tell Muppet jokes, you know.
Yes, right. Look, this is not perfect. The data is not perfect, but it's pretty darn good. This area in San Diego is our pilot area. We also did one in the Chesapeake Bay. And starting just 6 months ago, began to manipulate the data to see if this vision that Gary so nicely articulated could actually hold true. We talked with local planners. We're currently looking at various authoritative science people to check the models and check the analytics that we're doing. So it's a process, I would say, wouldn't you say?
I would say, and you know, I think one of the things that's nice here is the brilliant work of the technologists at Esri, I think tying up with the storytelling power of National Geographic. You know, we reach actually now 700 million people around the world between our television assets and our print and digital assets, and believe it or not, we're the #1 Instagram account in the world. We're up there with Kim Kardashian now. So we just passed LeBron, and you guys have to go on Instagram and help us.
Yes.
So, but in social media, this means that there's many people of different age demographics, Jack, who are connecting with the National Geographic story of using the power of science, exploration, and storytelling to change the world. And of course, mapping and cartography have been a core part of our life for forever.
Forever.
And now it's an opportunity to kind of show people and visualize for them through the use of mobile technologies and other places that can give them the tools to dream thoughts and connect people in communities who can make things actually happen.
Yes.
That's what's so exciting.
Yeah, in many ways, don't make a mistake. This is not a top-down, the plan. It's content and services that people can be used that will inspire people at all different levels. They can take the data and do with as they wish. And the way planning is done here in the United States is sort of that way. You know, you mentioned Olmsted. Olmsted was a landscape architect. My kind of guy.
Yeah.
When Olmsted did his work in the 1800s, it started what's called a landscape movement. And there was this idea of parks and green infrastructure back in the 1800s. And the plan for Boston, the plan for New York, there was chains of parks. But somehow that kind of got lost here, that sort of grandiose, let's lay out the green infrastructure. Like, I mean, we have gray infrastructure like sewer lines and roads and et cetera, but we don't really have any longer in America's vision this green infrastructure notion. Meanwhile, the Europeans and the Australians and They took this idea and they've made it come alive. In the EU, there's legislation for green infrastructure, and they're applying it in every city, in every country, Spain, for example, Switzerland, Germany, Italy. Green infrastructure planning. It's a foundation for creating our future. So we've sort of lost it. So part of what I'm hoping we'll accomplish and what Gary thinks we can do with storytelling is make this come back to America, that, where it all started. And it did have a huge effect when it was going on, resulting in our national park system in some ways. But we have more work to be done. So this is basically our vision. And I really would like you guys to help us make this come alive. And yeah, there we go.
So this is, of course, again, the 100th anniversary of the national parks. They're going to have record attendance this year.
Yes.
And this is also, as we tried to portray, this is also a public health issue. This is a way of getting all of us out in nature and getting us outside. And you can't really care about America and our planet without really appreciating what our biodiverse nation is all about. And it's so exciting to be on the cutting edge of this, and I think we owe it to our kids and grandkids to take what we know in this room, which is so much, and contribute just at least a piece of that to future generations who will thank us.
That's it. Gary, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.